Hello folks, and welcome to GED Microlearning. This is a YouTube channel specialized in the GED math test. As you know, the GED test comprises a number of different format of questions, from multiple choice to drag and drop, fill in the blank, etc., which we will be covering today. So you'll notice this week is a little bit different. Usually our quizzes are just 10 questions every week. This week we decided to do 50 questions, and it's just an experiment to see what you folks prefer most. So please let me know in the comments down below, do you prefer longer videos like this one, 50 questions every few weeks, or would you prefer 10 questions per week? All right, the next thing that I've done, which is also different if you've been following the channel, is that I've grouped questions into categories. So let me know what you think about that. All right, so the first category of questions that we're going to deal with are slope questions. And slope can be asked in a number of different ways in the test. So in this first question, they ask you, for the line below, what is the slope of the line? Okay, and what this question requires you to do is to be able to extract some information from the graph, such as the ordered pairs or the coordinates of this line. So let's recap first of all what a slope is. So slope measures the steepness of a line, whether whether that line is going up or going down. It's also sometimes referred to as the rise over the run, meaning how much it changes on a vertical plane versus the horizontal plane. And there in the bottom you have the formula that we use to calculate slope. Okay, so if we go back to our question, the first thing that you want to do if you get a question like this is select any 2 points on the line and find the coordinates of that point. Okay, so what is the x coordinate and what is the y coordinate? Once you have this, now you can go ahead and take those numbers that you just found and plug them into the formula that I showed you before. Okay, so if we plug these numbers in like this, it would give you that the slope is equal to 1/5. Okay, so the answer is B. Question 2 looks at how you find the slope of a line when they give you a set of ordered pairs. So here it says, find the slope of a line that passes through 3, 9 and 5, 7. Write your answer in the box below. All right, so what you have to realize here is that whenever you get these two numbers in a parentheses, what they're giving you is a set of ordered pairs. And ordered pairs are nothing else than the coordinates for a point. Okay, so the first of those numbers, in this case the 5, is the value for the x coordinate, and the -3 in this case is the value for y. And once again, we're going to look at that formula that I gave you before. So if we go back to the question, here you can see that we have two sets of ordered pairs. So in the first set of numbers, your x value will be 3, and this will be x1 simply because it's the first set of numbers that they give us. The second coordinate, the one for y, will be 9. And if we do the same thing with the second set of numbers, x2 will be 5 and y2 will be 7. So with this knowledge, now it's very easy. All you have to do is take those numbers and plug them into this formula like this, and that will give you m equals -2 divided by 2, which ultimately gives you -1. All right, so another way that they can ask you slope is to include a little bit of another piece of the story. So they can give you a function that you have to solve before you can get the coordinates. Okay, so here they give you an equation. So it says, given y is equal to 2x plus 2, find the slope of the line. And there on the right side, they give you a table that is partly completed. So what you have to realize is that this table is actually, this is actually a function. Okay, so what you have to do, what functions are basically input and output systems, if you like. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. Meaning, if you look at the table, the first line tells you when the value of x in that equation on your left is equal to 1, y is going to equal to 4. Okay, so what you have to do to fill out the table is plug those x values into the equation. Okay, so that would be your input and you're finding the output. Okay, so if we take the number 0, and we plug it into the equation on the left like this, we have that y is equal to 2 times 0 plus 2, that's going to give us 2. So the value for y that we can put in the table is 2. All right, and this is all there is to it. So let's go ahead and do the next one. So for 3, it would look like this. So that's 6 plus 2 is equal to 8. And then finally, same thing for the value for 5. Okay, so 2 times 5 is 10 plus 2 would give us 12. All right, so now what you have here on the right side is a table with coordinates, or ordered pairs if you like, for x and y. And all you have to do to find the slope is choose any 2 sets of ordered pairs. I've chosen these 2 and plug them into the equation that we just saw before. Okay, so I chose these 2 points, but you can choose any points. I chose y1 as the first, the first ordered pair as the first line, and the second ordered pair as the second line on the table. So if you figure that out, it gives you that m is equal to 2. Now, you don't have to choose those 2 points. Those are the ones that I chose. You could choose any 2 points. So we'll choose another set of ordered pairs, and you'll see that you will get the same answer regardless. Okay, so if we take these 4 values, and we plug them into the equation like this, you end up with 8 minus 4, which is ultimately also 2. Okay, so that's another way that you can do it, also if you want to check your work. There you go. So that's answer A. All right, so question 4 is asking you to look at the slope of the line, and here they give you an equation. And in this question, you don't actually have to do any math, but what you have to do is you have to understand what each part of this equation represents. So just a quick recap. When we look at slope equations, usually they give them to you in 2 forms. And the first one would be the standard form, where you have an equation that looks like this: ax plus by is equal to c, or more commonly perhaps the y-intercept form, okay? Y is equal to mx plus b. So let's remind ourselves that the m in the equation is the slope, and the b is the y-intercept, okay? So the slope is that number, or that coefficient in front of the x value, and the b is the y-intercept. So now it's very easy, right? If we go back to our question, all we have to do to find the slope is to look at that number, that coefficient in front of the x value, which in this case is 3/5, answer C. Okay, so another thing about the GED is that they have certain questions where you actually have to interact with a graph or a number line. For example, in this case, they're asking you to plot some points on a graph. All right, so be aware of this. Excuse me. So in this question, it says, graph this line using the slope and y-intercept. And the equation is y is equal to 4x plus 2. Okay, so once again, here you have to remember this formula that we just went through. Okay, because they're actually asking you specifically to plot the line using these 2 elements of the formula, okay, the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so let's start with the easier part, which is the y-intercept, which is letter B in your formula. So this is the point at which the line is going to cross the y-axis, okay, so the vertical line on your graph. And here you can see that it's positive 2. So all you have to do is go to your y-axis, which is the vertical line, and put a point there in positive 2. Okay, that's it, you're done. The next thing that they said is that you have to use the slope. The slope, we said, was the coefficient or the number in front of the x value. So in this case, we have that slope is equal to minus 4. And you can rewrite that as minus 4 over 1. Okay, so remember that the slope is the change in the vertical plane in y, which we call the rise, over the change in the horizontal or x-axis, which we call the run. Okay? And slope can be positive, meaning that your line is kind of going upward, but in this case you can see that it's a negative number. So that means that your line is going to be pointing downwards, okay? It's a downward slope. So what you need to do to plot this is simply do that, okay? So the minus 4 is going to be your y value. So you're going to start at the y-intercept, so at positive 2, and you're going to go down 4 numbers, okay, because it's -4. And then you're going to move 1 to the right, okay, because we said that the change in x is 1, +1, and the change in y is -4. So your next point would be there. Okay, and that's it for this question. All right, so the next section in today's quiz has to do with graphs. And in the GED, you will be faced, or you will have to be able to understand histograms, bar graphs, line graphs, and circle graphs. Okay, so you have to be very familiar with those, and you also have to be able to, extract information and to use it to answer questions. All right, so question 1 looks at a histogram, and it asks you what percentage of employees at Acme earn $88,000. So just a quick recap, a histogram looks like this. It's basically when you have, it's kind of like a bar graph where all the bars have been put together, so to speak. And the first thing whenever you read a graph is to look at the title. In this case, I forgot to put the title. Next, you look at the y-axis. So this was a histogram on frequency of rain each month. So that's in what the y-axis is showing. Then you look at your x-axis, in this case, the months. So if I told you how many days or what was the frequency of rain in September, what you would do is go to the bar for September, follow that bar to the top, and then follow that bar to the left. Okay, so the frequency of rain in September would be 18 days. That's how you read a histogram. All right, so let's go back to our histogram. And here, once again, first thing we're going to do is read the title. So this is a histogram that's showing you the distribution of salaries of a corporation called Acme. In the y-axis, it's telling you how many employees work at this company. And then in the x-axis, it's telling you how much money each of these employees earn. And the question asks you specifically for the folks that, the percentage of folks that earn more than $88,000, okay, which would be this last bar. Okay, so because the question is asking you to look at the percentage of all employees that earn $88,000 in this company, what you're going to use is this percentage rule to answer the question. And I really, really recommend that you commit this formula to memory because it is going to make your life so much easier. Okay, so the formula goes like this. It says that the total, or the base, multiplied by the rate or percentage is going to equal to the part. Okay, so in the context of our problem, what it's asking us is what percent of the total number of employees in this company earn $88,000. Okay, so let's get our numbers first from the graph. So first of all, we have to find out how many people work at this company. So here we would look at our y-axis, and they tell us that the maximum number of employees, it looks like it's 600. It's probably, actually, I'm probably wrong here. It's more like 525, but I'm going to use the number 600 just because it's more clear. Okay, so we're going to use that number for the base, for the total. And then it's asking us, out of this 600 total, what percentage earn $88,000. Okay, so we have to find out how many of these people are there. So once again, we go to the top of that bar and then move to the left, and that tells us that there's 100 of those employees that earn $88,000. Okay, so we would go ahead and plug in those numbers into the equation like this. And now all you have to do is find out the rate or the percentage, which would be 100 divided by 600, okay, which is 0.16, and then we multiply it by 100 in order to gain the percentage, which is approximately 16.6%. All right, so that's basically how you would solve this problem. Okay, question 7 is going to look at line graphs. And this is a drop-down menu question. So sometimes you have these questions where they have a drop-down menu and you click it and it gives you kind of the answer options. And how do we read this this type of graph? Well, same way that we read our previous graph, okay? You have to develop a system that you follow to the letter every time you read a graph, okay? Because that way you're going to be really confident, you're not going to get confused, and you just do it again and again and again and again, all right? So I am going to drill this into your head. All right, first thing, let's look at the title. What is it telling us? It's telling us the average monthly rainfall. The y-axis is telling us, I guess it's the number of inches of rainfall. The x-axis is telling us the number of months. Okay, so it's telling us presumably how many inches of rain, because we don't have, it doesn't specify it in the y-axis, but how many inches of rain fall in each of these months. And then we have another element here in the top, which is this legend. Okay, so here it's telling you that the purple line represents city 2, and the orange line represents city 1. The question specifically asks us for rainfall in city 2, and more specifically, when rainfall was constant. So if you look at that line graph, that line, you can see that in the month of November and December, the rain in this city was exactly the same. Okay, so it looks like they had an average monthly rainfall of 1 inch, or whatever that represents. Okay, so all you have to do is go to the drop-down menu and you hit November and December. All right, so question 8. Question 8 is a bar graph, and when we look at bar graphs in the GED, sometimes they will give you horizontal bar graphs and sometimes vertical bar graphs. Okay, so you have to be familiar with both. The question here says, which snack was preferred mostly by girls compared to boys? All right, so what are we going to do? You're going to follow your system. Look at the title. What is this graph telling you? It's telling you the preferred snack choices of students at a high school. What is the y-axis telling you? It's telling you that they inquired about their preferences regarding to candy, chips, chocolate bars, cookies, crackers, fruit, etc. What is the x-axis telling you? It's telling you the number of students who liked these choices. And then we have a legend. The purple bar represents girls in this high school. The blue bar represents boys. All right, so let's go back to our question. So here it's asking us specifically, the answer options specifically ask about vegetables, fruit, cookies, and candy. So I've eliminated the other options just for clarity. And here now it's very clear, right? Which snack is preferred more by girls versus boys? Well, obviously the fruit. You can see that the girls, which are who represent the purple bar, is much greater than the boys represented with the blue bar. Okay, so the correct answer would be B. All right, so question 9 is a circle graph, and it tells you, in the community depicted in the graph, the population is 41,570. How many of the members are Hispanic or Latino? All right, so once again, follow the system. What is this showing you? It's showing you the population of a specific part of the world based on the race and ethnicity of the people that live there. And 2, in the question, they're asking you specifically about Hispanic or Latino people. So what you would do is look at the different slices of your pie graph and select the Hispanic or Latino population. So you can see here that it's telling you that out of the total, out of the whole pie, 7.8% are Hispanic or Latino. And then the other piece of the information that you require to answer the question is actually in the question itself, right? It's telling you that the population, the total, is 41,570. So how do you answer this question? By using this percentage rule that we've already come across. Okay, so in this case, they've given us the total, or the base, or the total, which is 41,570, which is there in the bottom right in blue. And they've given us also the percentage, which is 7.8, okay, which represents the percentage of Hispanic or Latino people. And they want us to know how many people this is. Is it 3,000 people out of 41,570? Is it 10,000 people? Okay, that's what you have to find out. So all you do is multiply these two together. Don't forget to change that percentage to decimals like this. And then that gives you 3,242. Okay, so that would be the correct answer. All right, so question 10 is another bar graph problem, but in this case the bars are vertical. And you'll notice that also it's a little bit different because we don't have a y-axis. As you can see, the numbers that would make up the y-axis are actually placed on top of the bars. All right, so here it's asking you what was the difference between married parents receiving nutrition assistance in 2014 versus 2 unmarried parents in 2007. Once again, how do we read this? What is this telling us? It's telling us in the title that these are the number of children that received food stamps based on their living arrangement. As I said, there's no y-axis. Instead, we have these numbers on top of the bars. Okay, so that's what you're going to have to watch out for. And then, your x-axis is looking at the year in which this happened, right? So either 2007 or 2014. And then here on the top, we have our legend, which is telling you what each of these bars represents. Okay, so for example, the green bar represents a household where there's only a mother. The purple represents a household where the parents are married, and so forth. Okay, so the question says, what was the difference between married parents receiving nutrition assistance in 2014 versus 2 unmarried parents in 2007? So let's look at the first part of the equation. So if we look at the bar graphs on the right, which represent 2014, and we look at the purple bar, which represents married parents, it tells you that married parents in 2014, 5.2 million received nutrition assistance. And then in 2007, if we look at 2 unmarried parents who represent the yellow bars, that was 0.5 million. Because the question is asking you about the difference is a code word for subtracting. Okay, so whenever you see difference, all you have to do is subtract these two numbers. Okay, so the correct answer would be D, which is 4.7 million. All right, the final question in the graph section is another line graph. In this case, we have 3 lines, and the answer options also require you to understand ratios. Okay, so it's asking you the following. During month 2, the ratio of temperatures between Minnesota and Raleigh, and it's asking you what the ratio between the temperatures in these 2 cities was. So let's go ahead and follow our script as always. What is this showing us? There we go, the average monthly temperatures. What is the y-axis showing us? It's showing us what those temperatures were in degrees Fahrenheit. What is the x-axis showing us? It's showing us the temperatures in Fahrenheit at specific months. Okay, so month 1, month 2, month 3, etc. And then here we have a legend, and it's telling us what each of these lines represent. Okay, so the blue line represents Minnesota, the red line Phoenix, the green line Raleigh. Okay, so I've erased the rest of the graph just for clarity. The question asks us what's happening in Minnesota and what's happening in Raleigh in month 2. So if we just select those 2 points, okay, you can see that Minnesota, which is the blue line, the temperature is approximately 20 degrees, and in Raleigh, it's approximately 40. Okay, so the ratio would be 20 to 40. And of course, you have to reduce this to its simplest form, which would be 1 in 2. And this is option D. Okay, so in this next section, we're going to do a few geometry problems. And we're going to start with problems associated to triangles. So it says, Mike has to drive his truck up a ramp that forms a right angle. The ramp is 12 feet in height, 18 feet in length horizontally from the base. What is the length of the ramp in feet? All right, so if we were to draw this out, basically it would look like this. So there's a ramp, and then they're telling us it's 12 feet in height, 18 feet in length horizontally, and they're asking us to find the length of the ramp, which would be x. And what you have to recognize here is, and also they've told us that this is that it forms a right triangle. Okay, so what you have to recognize is that here what they're asking you is to do this. This is a Pythagorean theorem question. Okay, so if you remember, the Pythagorean theorem is this. It says that when you have a right triangle, the legs of that triangle, a and b squared, are equal to the longest length, c squared. All right, so all you have to do is apply that formula to this problem. So if we look at if we plug those numbers in like that, that's what the equation would look like. 12 squared is that amount, and then we just clean it up a little bit like that. And now remember that in order to get rid of that squared number on the letter C, what you have to do is you have to take the square root. Okay, so we have to take the square root on both sides. And that gives us that C is equal to 21.6 feet, okay, which is option B. Question 13 asks you the perimeter of the following figure. And just to quickly remind ourselves what the definition of perimeter is, it's essentially the distance around a figure. So in this case, the perimeter is this distance going around that square. Okay, so all you have to do here is basically they're giving you certain values for each side of this figure. So what you want to do is add up all these values together. And remember that you're going to add like terms together. Okay, so all the A's are going to go together, all the B's are going to go together. So if we add all the A's together, so 4A plus A plus A plus 4A, that gives you 10A. And then if you add all the B's together, that would just give you B. Okay, so the answer is C. All right, so question 14 looks at what the area of a triangle is below, and you can see that they give you the height, and they also give you the base in inches. So here, what you have to recognize or be able to find, because you will have those formulas provided for you, is that this is the formula for the area of a triangle. So all you have to do is plug those numbers in. So we have 8 times 10, which would be 80, divided by 2. That gives you an area of 40. Answer C. Question 15. So Jules is designing a circular garden for his yard. He will use 8-meter dividers to create different sections within the garden. He also wants to put a fence around the whole garden. How many meters of fencing will Jules need? All right, so this is what he wants to do, what they're asking us. They want to know if he was to put a fence around the garden like that, closer to the garden, of course, how many meters would he need? So this is kind of like a perimeter question, like what we just saw before, right? Except that when we talk about circles, instead of calling it the perimeter, we call it the circumference. Okay, so what is the distance around that circle? And this is the formula for circumference: 2 times pi times r. Okay, remember that pi is the number 3.14. That's a number that you should commit to memory. And r means the radius. And remember that the radius is half of the diameter. So if the diameter is the whole length across the middle of the circle, the radius is half of it. Okay, so in this case, the radius is 8 meters. The whole distance across would be the diameter, which is 16. Okay, so all you have to do now is plug those numbers into the formula for circumference, which is that, and that ultimately gives you 50.24, which would be option D. All right, so question 16 looks at the area of a rectangle. So it says Joy is building a rectangular patio with within one side of her yard. The rest of the yard shown below will be planted with flowers and grass. What is the area of the flowers and grass portion of Joy's yard? Sorry, I totally wrote this completely wrong. Write your answer below. Okay, so what you want to remember is that when you look at an area of a rectangle, it's essentially equal to the length times the width. So if you wanted to find out first the area of the whole yard is actually made up of two sections, right? It's made up of the patio, which is the smaller rectangle in white, and also the part of grass and flowers. Okay, so you would have to add the individual areas of these two rectangles together. So if we look at the yard, the whole yard, which would be, we would have to multiply the length and the width. So in this case, 20 multiplied by 25, which gives you 500. If we do the same thing for the patio, it would give us 8 times 11 is equal to 88. Okay? So now we have that the whole yard is going to be the sum of these two, so 588. So if we wanted to find out just how much of that is the grass, we would basically subtract the whole yard, which we found to be, I beg your pardon, I said it wrong. The whole yard is 500, and then you would subtract the patio, which is 88. Okay, so that gives you that the grass portion is 412. All right, so the next section looks at fractions. So fractions, you have to make sure that you're able to add, subtract, multiply, divide, that you're familiar with improper fractions, and that you're also familiar with mixed numbers, okay? All right, so question 17 says, Olivia's textbook weighs 7/9 of a pound, and her geometry textbook 2/5 of a pound. How much do her books weigh? So let's quickly recap fractions. So remember, fractions consist of these two numbers. The top number is the numerator, bottom number, denominator. All right, and if you were to add or subtract, remember that the rule is that the two denominators, meaning the numbers at the bottom, have to be the same in order for you to add or subtract. All right, so that's step one. So, oops, sorry, I kind of messed it up there. Okay, so that's the first thing that we have to do is find a common denominator. So to do that, we're going to take the 7/9, which was the weight of the chemistry book, and multiply by 5/5. That gives us 35/45. We're going to do the same thing for the geometry textbook, which weighed 2/5. So multiply that by 9/9. That gives you 18/45. Okay, so now what you have to do is basically add those two fractions together. So 35/45 plus 18/45. All you have to do is add the numerators, which are the numbers on the top, together. And then the denominator is going to stay the same. So 35 plus 18 is 53, is equal to 45. And of course, you have to reduce this fraction to its simplest form. So another way to write 53/45 is to say that it's equal to 45/45 plus 8/45. Why are we doing this? Because we want to have a mixed number. Okay, so we want to reduce it to its simplest expression. So 45/45 would be 1, and then you add that 8 and 45 pounds on. 8 and 45th of a pound, rather. Okay, question 18. So it says Sarah spends 4/11 of her paycheck on rent and 2/11 on food, 1/11 on her car. How much does she have left for other things? All right, so if we wanted to look at the amount left, we would take the paycheck and subtract the expenses that they're giving us in the question, okay? So the paycheck is going to represent 1, or we could say that it represents 11/11. Why am I saying that? Well, because if you look at the question, all the items, all the expenses are in 11ths, all right? So we have 4/11, 2/11, 1/11. Okay, so if we make the paycheck 11/11, then it's very easy to subtract stuff. Okay, so again, we would subtract the rent, which is 4/11. We would subtract the food, 2/11, and we subtract the car, 1/11. Again, as we saw before, The rule is that in order to add or subtract, all the denominators have to be the same, which is the case in this question. Now, if we subtract all of these together, subtract them, we end up with 4/11, which is option B. Question 19. So Luis needs 1 1/5 cups of butter for a batch of cookies. If he makes 9 batches of cookies, how much butter does he need? Okay, so notice here that we have a mixed number, right? We have 1 1/5 cups of butter. So step 1 is going to be to change that mixed number to an improper fraction. So if we do that, it's going to equal 6/5. Let me show you how I did this. So I use what is known as the MAD method, where M stands for multiplication. So you multiply the whole number by the denominator. So 1 times 5, which is equal to 5. The A of the MAD method is add. So you're going to add the numerator, in this case it's 1, to the answer that you got before. Okay, so in this case, we had 5, and now we're going to add 1. That gives us 6. And this is going to be the new numerator of our answer. And then finally, the D stands for denominator. And the denominator is going to be the same as the old denominator. So in this case, the denominator will remain as 5. And that gives us 6/5. Okay, so now we have that he needs 6/5 of butter for 1 batch of cookies, and he wants to make 9. So all you have to do is multiply this fraction by 9. Remember that we can write 9 as a whole number just as 9, or we could write it as 9/1. It's the same thing. And when you multiply fractions, you simply multiply across. So in this case, 5 times 9 is 54, and that would be divided by 5 times 1, which is 5. And of course, you have to do the next step, which is to reduce this fraction. So 54/5 can also be written as 50/5 plus 4/5. So why do I do this? Because, as I said, I want to reduce it to a smaller, to its simplest form. So if we take the first fraction, 50 divided by 5, that's 10, right? Plus 4/5, that would give us 10 4/5. So that's the final answer. Okay, so question 20 looks at division in fractions. So it says, Bob has a piece of pipe that is 3/4 of a foot long. He needs to cut it into pieces that are 1/15 of a foot long. How many pieces can he cut? So this is what he has. Okay, that's the pipe that he has. It's 3/4 of a foot long, and they're telling us that he has to he can cut it into these different pieces that are 1/15 long. So we have to find out how many specific pieces this is. So we would divide 3/4 divided by 1/15, and that's going to tell us how many pieces he can cut. So when you divide by a fraction, you have to remember that what you really are doing is multiplying by the reciprocal. What does that mean? It means that you're going to take your second fraction and flip it over, okay? And instead of dividing, you're multiplying. Okay, so instead of dividing by 1/15, you are now multiplying by 15/1. And now this is very easy, right? Because remember that in multiplying fractions, you only have to multiply straight across. So 3 times 15 is 45, and 4 times 1 is 4. If you divide that again, you end up with this fraction, with this number, 11.25. So he can basically cut the piece of pipe into 11 pieces, and then he'll have a little bit of pipe left over. Okay, folks, so the next part of the quiz concerns percentages, and I'm just going to do a quick plug for the channel, so if you're finding it helpful, if you could just share this on your social media pages, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so question 21, it says, you were trying to help your brother with his taxes. His taxable income is $6,300. Use the table to determine how much he will pay in taxes. Write your answer in the box below. Okay. So the first thing is to find out which tax bracket he's in. So they're telling us that his taxable income is $6,300. So that's the bracket there in the middle where he would fall in. And in the column on the right, it's telling you how to calculate the tax for that bracket. Okay, so it tells you that those people who earn between $4,500 and $7,499 are going to be taxed $100 plus 6% of any amount above $4,500. Okay, so the second thing after we do this is to calculate how much money he makes above $4,500, because that's the amount that's going to be taxed. Okay, so we would subtract 6,300, which is his income, minus 4,500. That gives us the amount above that value, which is 1,800, and this is what is going to be taxed. Okay, so then step 3 is to find out, calculate the 6% tax on this amount. So we would multiply 1,800 times 6%, which is the same as saying 0.06. That gives us 108. And don't forget that they told us that there's a fixed tax value, which was $100 as well. Okay, so we have to add $100 to this new tax, to the tax that we also just calculated. Okay, so we would say 100 plus 108, that gives us $208, which is his how much he will pay in taxes. A bed and breakfast charges $48 per day for a double room. In addition, there is a 5% tax. How much does a couple pay, rounded to the nearest dollar, for a 3-day stay? Okay, so the first thing you want to do is calculate the cost for 3 days. So you would take $48, which is the cost per day, multiplied by 3. That gives you $144. And then the second thing is calculate 5% tax on that amount. Okay, so if you multiply 144 times 5%, which is also written as 0.05, that gives you $7.2. So all you have to do now is, for the final cost, is to add these two numbers that you just found out. And notice that the question asks you to round to the nearest dollar. So instead of writing the answer as 151.20, you would write it as 151. A squirrel drops their heart rate to 15 beats per minute in cold weather, which is 20% less than their normal heart rate. What is their normal heart rate? All right, so here we're going to use our formula that we've seen repeatedly today, which is the percentage rule, to find out. So what they give us in the question is the percent, or the percentage, or the rate, and they also give us their heart rate in the cold. Okay, so if we plug those numbers in like this, then to find the base total, you would just divide 15 by 0.20. That gives you that the normal heart rate is 75 beats per minute. Okay, that would be the total, or the base. Option C. Okay, so Jules has a jar of spare change in his kitchen. In total, he has 700 coins. 254 are quarters, 178 are nickels, 65 are dimes, and the rest are pennies. What percentage are dimes and pennies combined? Write your answer in the box below. All right, so first step is to find out how many pennies he has in the jar. So we know that he has a total of 700 coins. And we know that 254 are quarters, 178 nickels, 65 are dimes. So, and the rest are pennies, right? So if we add the quarters, nickels, and dimes, we end up with 497. So in order to find the pennies, we would just subtract that number from the total number of coins. Okay, so 700 minus 497. That gives us that we have 203 pennies. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is that in the question they ask us what percentage are dimes and pennies combined. So we would add the number of dimes, which was 65, plus the number of pennies, 203, that gives us 268. So now that we have that amount, we can go ahead and find the percentage. And again, notice that here we're using this same rule. So again, make sure you memorize this. It's super easy when you know this rule. So all we have to do is plug these numbers in that we have found out. So the total, or the base, is 700, which they give us in the question. And the part that makes up dimes and pennies is 268, which we just found out. So all you have to do now is solve for the rate or percentage by dividing both sides by 700. That gives you 0.38. If you multiply that by 100, that gives you the percentage, which is 38. All right, so the next section is polynomials. And again, with polynomials, it's kind of like fractions. You have to make sure you can divide, you have to make sure you can multiply, add, subtract polynomials. So the first two questions are actually division problems, where you have to divide polynomials, and the best way to do this is through long division. All right, so whenever you have to divide a polynomial, you should follow 3 steps in a cycle until you reach the end. Okay, so you're going to divide, multiply, subtract. That would be one cycle. And then again, divide, multiply, subtract. I'll explain. Okay, so if we were to divide these two polynomials like this, the first step, as we said, is divide. And you're going to divide the first expression of each polynomial by each other. Okay, so in this case, we're going to divide x squared divided by x, and that gives us x. And this x now goes on top of the little division bar. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 is going to be multiply. So we're going to multiply that x by this x. That gives us x squared. And we're also going to multiply by the number. So x plus multiplied by 2 is 2x. Okay, so that's step 2, multiply. Step 3 is going to be subtract. So you're going to take those numbers that you found and you're going to subtract them from the value above. So x squared minus x squared is 0, and 10x minus 2x is 8x. And now what you have to do next is bring that 40 down. Okay, so now you have 8x plus 40. Okay, so you completed one cycle. All right, and each cycle, as I told you, is going to be division, multiplication, and subtraction. So we're not done yet, right? Because we still have to continue dividing. So we're going to start our second cycle. And again, it's going to be the same steps. So it's going to be divide, multiply, and subtract. Divide. So we're going to divide 8x by x. What does that give us? 8. Okay, so we're going to put the 8 on the top of the division bar. Step 2, multiply. So 8 multiplied by x, and then 8 multiplied by 2, which would give us 16. Okay? Step 3, subtract. So we're going to go ahead and subtract these two. So 8x minus 8x is 0, and then 40 minus 16 is 24. Okay, so you can see that this division is not neat, so we have a remainder. And when you write your response, it would be x plus 8, which is the number on top of the division, and then the remainder is going to be a fraction. It's going to be 24 over x plus 2, which is the number that you were dividing by. Okay, so your final answer is A. All right, let's do a second polynomial, division. Okay, so in this case, again, you have a division, and we're going to do the same thing, however many cycles we need. So first thing, divide. So x squared divided by x is x. Put that x in the top there. Step 2, multiply. So x multiplied by x is 2x, and x multiplied by negative 8 is negative 8. Step 3, subtract. So x squared minus x squared is 0, and minus 5x minus negative x is equal to positive 3x. And then remember, we have to bring that number down, so that's 3x minus 24. And again, we're going to start a second cycle. Step 1, divide. So divide 3x by x. That gives us 3. We put the 3 up in the division bar. Step 2, multiply. So 3 multiplied by x is 3x, and 3 multiplied by negative 8 is negative 24. Step 3, subtract. So if we subtract 3, x minus 3x is 0, and minus 24 minus negative 24 is 0. Okay, so you can see that in this case we don't have a remainder. It's very clean, so our answer is going to be what is on top of the division bar, which is x plus 3. Okay, so that's how you divide polynomials. It's a little bit more engaged, but I find that this is the easiest at the end way of doing it. Okay, so question 27, they're asking us to simplify the following expression. So in this case, we are multiplying these two polynomials together, by each other rather. And what you do here is you use the distributive property, meaning that you're going to take that expression and you're going to multiply it by this first number, by 4m, and you're going to take the same expression and multiply it by negative 4. Okay, like this. So I've rewritten that there in the bottom. Okay, so that was step 1. Step 2 is you want to go ahead and simplify this. So again, we're going to use the distributive property. So if we look at the first bracket, we would multiply that 4m times 3m squared. That gives you 12m cubed, which you can see there in the bottom. Then 4m multiplied by 4m multiplied by m is 4m squared. And 4m multiplied by minus 5 is minus 20. All right, and you would repeat the same thing with the second bracket, and go ahead and do that yourself. So you end up with these numbers. And now all you have to do is, to get the final answer, is to merge like terms, meaning you're going to add every number that has the same exponent together. So 12m raised to the third power is the only number with raised to the third power, so that number stays by itself. But for example, we have 4m squared and we have minus 12m squared, so we would add those two together, and we would do the same for these numbers, right? So 20m minus 4m. So if you do that, that's what you should end with, and that is your final answer. Okay, the next question, you're adding two polynomials. So this is actually really simple. All you have to do is what we just did before, which is to combine like terms. So in this case, you would add those numbers raised to the second power. So 10x plus 2x squared is 12x squared. Do the same for these numbers that are x, so 7x plus 3x minus 10x is equal to 0. And then you have the minus 3 left over. So your final answer would be 12x squared minus 3. Okay, so in question 29, we are subtracting two polynomials from each other. And it's similar to what we just did before with the addition, but here you have to really be careful with the signs. Okay, so this sign, when you kind of apply the distributive property, you have to be really careful. Okay, so when you multiply this negative sign by 5x squared, by 5x, it's going to give you negative 5x. Negative sign multiplied by x is going to give you negative x. And then a negative sign multiplied by negative 3 is going to give you positive 3. Okay, so you would do that. Again, be really careful with the signs, because otherwise it's going to mess you up, and you would end up with this. Okay, and now what you want to do, once again, combine like terms. So we only have one term raised to the second power, so we leave that at that. Then we're going to look at these terms with x, add them together, that gives us 18x, and then we have the 3 remaining. All right, the next part is going to look at functions questions. So it says for the expression f p is equal to 10 is minus a squared plus 4, find p, write your answer in the shaded box below. So we actually already covered this at the beginning when we did the slope questions, but we'll go through it again. So whenever they give you an expression like this, remember that it's an input-output system. Okay, so for example, in this case, if you had the value of 0 plugged into that equation there on the left, the answer that you would get for y is 3. Okay, so if we go ahead and do it, and we put a 0 where the x is, we end up with 3 minus 2 multiplied by 0, which is equal to 3. All right, and that's the whole kind of deal with these function questions. So we go ahead and do that, and we introduce 3 into the equation. So we end up with 10 minus 3 squared plus 4. 3 squared, remember, is 9. Okay, so we end up with 10 minus 9 plus 4, which gives us 5. Okay, we have another one, and in this case, it's a two-step question because the first thing is that we have to find out the value of y when x is equal to 2, as we did in the previous question. And then, once we have that value, we have to plot that coordinate on the graph. Okay, so let's do that first step first. So we're going to find the value for y, as we saw before. So we're going to introduce the 2 where the x should be. So that gives us 2 multiplied by 2 squared plus 6 is 8 plus 6 divided by 2. That gives you 14 divided by 2, which is equal to 7. So that's step 1. Step 2 is that we're now going to plot that value. Okay, so the value for x is positive 2, and then the value for y is positive 7. Okay, so that is the coordinate. That's where you would plot that coordinate. Okay, question 32 says, Ryan has already taken 7 pages of notes in preparation for his class. He will take 2 pages of notes for every hour of class this week. Write the linear equation that shows the relationship between the time in class, in hours, and the number of pages of notes he will take. Okay, so here what you're going to do is, oh, sorry, I gave you the whole answer there. So we said he takes 2 pages of notes, and we're going to multiply that by the number of hours that he attends class, which we don't know how many that is because they don't tell you in the question. And then we're going to add to that the 7 pages of notes that he already took. Okay, so that's kind of like the fixed value that you have there. So if you translate that into a linear equation, it would be p is equal to 2 times h plus 7. Okay, we're going to do a second problem along those lines. So it says Elaine works repairing computers at home. She charges a base fee of $55 per visit and $30 per hour of work. How much would she charge for 3 hours of work? All right, so again, first thing is that we're going to write our linear equation the same way that we wrote it before. Okay, so we said that she charges $30 per hour of work. So we would multiply that 30 times h, the number of hours that she works. So sometimes it will be 1 hour, and sometimes it will be 7 hours, we don't know, plus the base fee that she charges, which is $55. Okay, and they're telling us in the question that she works out 3 hours. So all you do is that you plug in that 3 where the h was, and that gives you 90 plus 55, which is $155. Option C. Okay, now we're going to work on some algebra problems. So it says, there were 132 guests at a wedding reception. There were 3 servers, Joe, Mike, and Luke. Joe served 3 times as many people as Luke, and Mike served twice as many people as Luke. How many people did Mike serve? Okay, so this is what they're telling us. We have these 3 servers, Joe, Mike, and Luke, and that's going to equal 132 guests that they serve. And they tell us that Joe served 3 times as many as Luke, Mike 2 times as many as Luke, and Luke we don't know. Okay, so that's how you would write it. So Joe is 3x, where x represents Luke, Mike is 2x, and then Luke is just x. So all you do is that you substitute those into your equation like this, and you're going to add all those variables on the left. So 3x plus 2x plus x gives you 6x is equal to 32. And then you're going to divide both sides by 6 in order to find the value for x. Okay, so x, which represents Luke, if you look at those variables on the left, Luke served 22 people. But notice that the question asks you how many people did Mike serve. Mike served 2x. It tells us in the question. He served twice as many people as Luke. So all you have to do is plug that number in to the equation. So you would have 2 multiplied by 22 is equal to 44 people. Okay? Answer B. Joe found 32 spare coins between the cushions in his couch and car seats, which added up to $7.70. If he only found dimes and quarters, how many dimes did he have? Okay, so this question is a system of equation problem. So the first thing that you have to do is set up your equations, and you're going to have 2 equations. The first equation relates to the number of coins. So they're telling us that he found 32 coins in total, and these coins were dimes and quarters. Okay, so we have dimes and quarters. So let's put that in just letters. So we'll say D plus Q is equal to 32. And they're asking us how many dimes did he have? So I'm going to rewrite this equation for dimes, for the D value. Okay, so we would subtract Q from the left side and from the right side, and that gives us our equation. Okay, so that's the first equation, and just we're not going to do anything with it just yet, so just keep it there in the back of your head. And now we're going to write the second equation, which is based on coin value. So we know that all the coins that he got added up to $4.70. And these coins were dimes and quarters. So the dimes, a dime is 0.10 of a dollar, and a quarter is 0.25 of a dollar. Okay, so the equation that we would write is 0.10 multiplied by the number of dimes plus 0.25 multiplied by the number of quarters is equal to $4.70. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to introduce this equation into the coin value equation. Okay, so which we just found out. So instead of having a 0.10d, you're going to place that value that you got in the first equation into there. So it would look like this. Next, you're going to distribute this equation and solve for Q. So you would multiply 0.10 by 32. That gives you 3.2. And you multiply it also by Q, which gives you negative 0.10Q. And then, as always, what you're going to do now is combine like terms and solve for Q. So you combine those two together, right? And you end up with 3.2 plus positive 0.15Q is equal to $4.70. All right, and now what we want to do is what we always do. We want to isolate that Q on the left side of the equation, and we're going to do that by subtracting 3.2 from both sides. Okay, then we end up with 0.15Q on the left side and 1.5 on the right side. And now to isolate that Q value, we're going to divide both sides by 0.15. That gives us that Q is equal to 10. Okay, so he had 10 quarters. And now what you're going to do, remember that we had this equation. We said that dimes is equal to 32 coins minus the number of quarters. We just found out that the quarters were 10. So if we plug that value in, we end up with dimes is equal to 22. Okay, so he had 22 dimes, and then he had 10 quarters. So the correct answer is C. You've gone to the farmer's market to get some fruit. Your friend got 5 apples and 6 mangoes and paid $10. You got 5 apples and 8 mangoes. What is the price of an apple? Okay, so here we're going to do a systems of equation problem, but it's by a process of elimination. All right, so first of all, let's determine our variables. So we're going to call A the apples and M the mangoes. Excuse me. So your friend got 5 apples plus 6 mangoes and paid $10. And you got 5 apples and 8 mangoes, okay, is equal to $12. Great. So what we want to do is we want to kind of add these two equations that we just generated, but we want to eliminate one of the variables. Okay, so that we can solve for the other variable. So looking at this, the way that we could do this is to multiply one of the equations by -1. Okay, because if you add these two equations together, 5a plus -5a is going to cancel out. Okay, so if we go ahead and do that, that gives us this. And as we said before, now you've eliminated the 5a, and you end up with 2m is equal to -2, and when we divide it, that gives us m. Excuse me, m is equal to 1. Okay, so that's the first part of the equation. And now, in order to find the price of an apple, now that we have the value of m, we're going to go ahead and take that value and plug it into one of the equations. Okay, so if we use that equation, plug that number in, we end up with this. And what we want to do now is isolate that a on the left side. So we would subtract by 6 on the left side. Remember, what we do on the left, you do to the right. So we end up with 5a is equal to 4. And then in order to isolate that a, we're going to divide both sides by 5. That gives you that a is equal to 0.80. Okay, so an apple cost 80 cents. Option C. Question 37. A company is hosting a seminar for some of its new recruits. The budget for the event is $7,850. They paid a motivational speaker a $2,050 fee, and they rented a room in a hotel for $1,430. A packed lunch will cost $20 per participant. How many participants can join the event? All right, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to add up all the expenses that you're going to have, right? And make sure that it doesn't go above the budget. So we know that, so we have the lunch cost per person, and we'd have to multiply that by the number of people, plus the room that we rented, plus the speaker fee. And that should be equal to or less than the budget. Okay, so if we plug numbers in, it would look like this. We don't know how many people are attending the event. That's what we want to find out. So that is the x value. So if you go ahead and do that, you on the left side, you would add up, first of all, the cost of the room rent and the speaker fee to simplify it, clean it up a little bit. And now what we want to do is we want to isolate that 20x on the left side. So we would subtract 3,480 from the left side, do the same on the right side. We end up with this. And now, to find out x, which is the number of participants that can join the event without going over budget, we would divide both sides by 20. That gives us 218 participants. Okay, so that's the number of people that can attend the event, which is option B. Okay. A hotel sends its dirty towels out to a laundry service. Suites require 7 clean towels. Normal rooms require 4 towels. In order to get a discount from the laundry service, the hotel has to send at least 872 towels. Select the inequality below that describes the situation. All right. So we're going to call X the number of towels that are required for a suite, and Y the number of towels required for a normal room. So they're telling us in the question that both of these numbers have to be at least, they have to equal at least, so more than or equal to 872, okay, in order for them to get the discount. And we know that in the case of suites, they require 7 towels, so that would be 7x. And then normal rooms require 4 towels, so that would be 4 multiplied by y. So that would be basically our inequality, which is option 1. Two drones are 360 miles apart and are traveling towards each other. One drone is traveling at 18 miles per hour. The other drone is traveling at 22 miles an hour. How long will it be before they meet? Okay, so let's first draw that out. So we have two drones, and they're 360 miles apart, and they're traveling towards each other. One of them is traveling at 18 miles per hour. The other one is traveling at 22 miles per hour. And they're telling us how long will it be before they meet. So this is a problem where we have to find out the time, okay? So this is a distance problem. So this is the equation that you would use. And again, this is another equation that's worthwhile memorizing, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this information, the information from the question, and plug it into this equation. So the distance they're telling us is 360 meters. And the rate at which these drones are traveling is 18 miles per hour for one of the drones and 22 miles per hour for the other. So in total, the rate is 40 miles per hour. So now all we have to do is plug those numbers into our equation and solve for the time. Okay, the way that we do that is we're going to divide both sides by 40 so that we isolate the time there on the right side, and that gives us 9 hours. Option A. Okay, Joe's Coffee Shop makes a house blend coffee for $8.50 per pound. The blend is made up of a French roast costing $11.25 per pound and a dark roast at $7.40 per pound. The coffee shop currently has 5 pounds of French roast on stock. To finish making the house blend, how many pounds of dark roast must they grind? Okay, so for this, I think what's really helpful is to do like a little table. So they're telling us, let's go back to the question. So it says, the blend is going to be made up of French roast, and they're telling us that the price per pound is $11.25. And then they also tell us that they have 5 pounds on stock right now. So if we wanted to find out the total price of that French roast, we would multiply the price per pound times 5, because that's the number of pounds they have, right? So the total price would be 11.25 multiplied by 5. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for their dark roast. So the dark roast, the price per pound is $7.40, and we don't know how many number of pounds we need. Okay, so that's going to be X. So the total price would be $7.40 multiplied by X. And then finally, the house blend, they tell us, is worth $8.50 per pound. And in order to make it, we require a combination of these two coffees. So we don't know how many pounds we can make, so it's 5 plus X. And again, in order to get the total price, you would multiply $8.50 multiplied by 5 plus X. Okay, so this is kind of like if we, this would be the equation that you want to set up, okay, in words. So the total price of the French roast plus the total price of the dark roast is going to give you the total price of the house blend. So what you want to do is you want to take this information from the table that you just figured out before, like this, and plug it and substitute those values in. And then the next step would be to use the distributive property. So basically multiply that the right side of the equation out. So $8.50 times 5 plus $8.50 multiplied by X. Okay, so this is what you end up with. And now what you want to do is isolate that X. So on the right side, you're going to subtract $42 2.5. Remember that what you do on one side, you have to do to the other side. So we go ahead and do that. That gives us this. And now what we want to do is move that 7.40x on the left side to the right side. Okay, so we would subtract 7.40x from the left side. Remember, we have to do that now on the right side. And that gives us this amount. And now that we've cleaned everything up a little bit, in order to isolate that x, we would divide the right side by 1.10, and we have to do the same thing on the left side. And that gives you 12.5. Okay, so that's the number of pounds that you require to finish making the house blend. Okay, so this next set of questions deals with scientific notation. So it says a human hair is about 0.08 millimeters in diameter. Express that in scientific notation. So let's quickly recap what scientific notation is and what it tells us. So whenever you have an exponent like that, what this is telling you is two pieces of information. The first thing, it's telling you how many spots you're going to move the decimal point. Okay, so in this case, you would move the decimal point three spots. And the second thing that it's telling you is in which direction you're moving the decimal point, to the left or to the right. So in this case, because it's negative, that's telling you you move the decimal point to the left. Okay, so if we were to rewrite 3.7 like this, okay, we would move the decimal point 3 spaces to the left. So we have that would be your complete answer. So that is what 3.7 times 10 to the minus 3 is equal to. If you have, on the other hand, a positive exponent, then that's telling you that you are going to move, in this case, 3 spots to the right. Okay, so if we were to rewrite this out, 3.7 move to the right, that would be our final answer. Okay, so 3.7 times 10 raised to the third power is 3,700. All right, so let's go back to the question. So first of all, we're going to look at the answer options. Answer option A is a fraction. Okay, so it's not in scientific notation, so we can forget about that one. And the second option, B, is the same as the question, so we can get rid of that one. So now we have to select between C and D. Okay, so let's work this out. So 8 times 10 to the negative 2, what it's telling you is that you have to move that decimal point 2 spaces to the left because it's negative, right? So 1, 2, that's the answer. Okay, 0.08. Let's do D, just for out of completion. So 8 times 10 to the second power would look like this. We take that decimal point, move it 2 spots to the right because it's positive, and that would be 800. All right, so your correct answer is C. All right, so the following expression asks you to subtract 2 numbers that have like an exponent. And here what you would do is you would rewrite this expression so you actually have, so both exponents are the same. Okay, so if we take this number and we change it into the 10 to the 5th power, then we can go ahead and subtract. All right, so in order to do that, if we move the decimal point 1 over, then we also increase the exponent by a power. Okay, so this, and just to prove it to you that this is correct, 12 times 10 to the 4, as we said before, positive exponent tells you 4 spots to the right, so it would be equal to 120,000. If we do the same thing for this, 1.2 times 10 to the 5th, all right, same thing, 5 spots to the right, that also gives you 120,000. Okay, so it's equivalent expressions. All right, so now that we have both of them that have the same exponent, all we have to do is subtract these numbers. multiply these numbers. That gives us a minus 3.8, and then 10 times 10 to the 5th, which is the correct answer, D. All right, what if you have an expression where you have to divide? Well, here what we want to do first is take these numbers and divide them by each other, as you would normally. That gives you 1.6. And then in the case of the exponents, what you're going to do is you're going to subtract them from each other. So 10 minus 1 from the top minus 3, okay, which gives you 10 raised to the power of minus 4. So your complete answer would be 1.6 times 10 raised to the power of minus 4, which is option C. All right, the next few questions are going to be statistics. And for statistics, you have to remember 4 things: mean, median, mode, and range. Okay, so these are come up again and again and again. And I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to pose the same question, but asking you these three things. Okay, so here it says 9 friends earn the amount below per hour. What is the median pay? All right, so median refers to the middle value. Okay, so whenever you get asked median, what you have to do is you have to take all the numbers that they gave you and you have to rearrange them from the lowest number to the highest number, like that. And then the median is the number in the middle. Okay, so if you count them, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers to the left, 4 numbers to the left and 4 numbers to the right of 9. Okay, so that's the median, the middle number, which in this case is B. I could ask you the same question, but now I can ask you what is the mode instead of what is the median. All right, and the mode, remember, is the most frequent value. So all you have to do, this is pretty easy, just go through the numbers and select the most common value. In this case, it's 6, which is option A. They can also ask you mean. Okay, so same question, but this time they're asking you the mean. And the mean is basically the average, or the arithmetic mean. So here, the same way that you would take an average, you just add up the total and divide it by the number of items. So if you add up all of these payments per hour, and then you divide it by 9, you end up with 9.27, which rounds up to 9.28. All right, and this is option C. And then question 47 is range. Okay, so this is the 4th kind of important concept in statistics. So same question again, but instead of asking you mean, median, or mode, I'm asking you what is the range. So the range, what you have to remember is the difference between the largest number and the smallest number. So again, all you have to do here is look at your numbers, find the lowest one and the highest one, and just subtract them from each other. So the lowest value is 6, highest value is 15. If we subtract them from each other, we get 9. Okay, that is the range. Okay, so the next few questions are inequalities. So here it says, solve the following inequality and write your answer in the box below. So sometimes students get confused with the inequality symbols. Don't get fazed by them. Just imagine they're an equal sign. Okay, you don't have to worry about them unless you divide by a negative number. So we'll see that in another example. But for now, what you would do here is what you do with any algebra problem. Okay, so you would apply the distributive property to multiply the equation on the right out. Okay, so you would multiply 2 times x and 2 times 3. And that gives you this. Now, on the right side, we're going to clean it up. So we're going to add the 8 and the 6. We get this. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 2x on the right to the left side. Okay, so in order for me to do that, I'm going to, isolate that 2x on one side. So what I'm going to do is subtract minus 2x from the right side, and whatever you do to the right side, you have to do to the left. So notice that both on the right side and on the left side, that 2x is going to cancel out. and I'm left with minus 10 is less than or equal to 14. Okay, so that is the correct answer. Excuse me. Okay, so this is another inequality, same sort of story. We're going to first of all distribute or apply the distributive property here, meaning that you're going to multiply that negative 1/2 times 14x and times negative x. So minus 1/2 times 14x is a minus 7, and minus 1/2 multiplied by minus 6 is positive 3. Okay, so that's what your inequality looks like now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate the x on one side. So I'm going to subtract 3 from the left side and from the right side. Sorry, I put those backwards. And then this gives me, I end up with this. And I'm going to move the 8x on the right to the left. Okay, so I'm going to subtract minus x from the right side, subtract minus x from the left side, from the right side, sorry. And that gives me minus x, 15x, negative 15x is less than 4. In order to isolate that x, I divide both sides by minus 15. And here's where you have to be careful, okay? Because when you divide by a negative number, the inequality is going to flip. It's going to change direction, okay? So notice that right now it's saying less than or equal to, but because we're dividing by a negative number, it's going to flip to the other side. So now our answer is x is more than or equal to 4 over 15, over negative 15, okay? So that's the only thing that you have to be careful in terms of these symbols. So correct answer is A. Okay, question 50. The yellow taxi cab charges $3.25 for flat rate and 50 cents for every additional mile. Jen has no more than $16 to spend on a ride. How many complete miles can she ride without going above her budget? All right, so the first thing is, let's define our variable. So we're going to call m the number of miles driven. So in order to calculate, to make sure that she doesn't go above her budget, we would write an equation like this, right? Where we're going to put the flat rate, which they're telling us is $3.25, plus the rate in miles, which is 0.5, which is 50 cents. And we're going to multiply that by the number of miles, which we don't know what it is, okay? We're going to call it m. And all of this has to be less than or equal to 16, because that's the budget, all right? So this is what your equation would look like. And now all you have to do is solve this inequality. So on the left side, you would subtract 3.25 from the left side so that they cancel out. Do the same thing on the right side, and you end up with this. And now in order to isolate that m, you would divide both sides by 50, by 0.50. So you end up with m is less than or equal to 25.5 miles. So in order for her not to go above her budget, the number of complete miles that she can ride is 25 miles. Okay, folks, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you prefer these longer videos every few weeks or you prefer a shorter 10-question quiz every week. And let me know what you thought about the new arrangement of questions, if it helps to block them by topic as we have. Once again, thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day and evening. If you found it helpful, please consider subscribing, share with your friends, give us a like. Thank you once again. Have a good one.